to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a place where words move slowly and softly, and tonight they will carry you into a quiet tale of letters once lost and love gently found. You are settling in now, finding a position that feels easy and comfortable. Your body knows how to rest, and you can let it show you the way. Feel the weight of your head supported by the pillow, the gentle cradle beneath your shoulders, the way blankets or sheets settle over you like a warm, familiar embrace. If you wish, you can let your eyes close, not because you have to, but because it feels pleasant to do so. Take a long, unhurried breath in, letting your chest and belly rise in their own time. Then let the breath fall away again, as naturally as a wave sliding back into the sea. With each exhale, the day thins and drifts from you. Thoughts can come and go like clouds across a wide sky. You do not need to follow them. You can simply notice them and let them float away. As you lie here, imagine a small town that moves at the pace of a quiet afternoon. Cobblestone streets, soft lamplight, and a river that slips past as calmly as you're breathing. In this town, an old bookshop hides a secret bundle of letters. And through those letters, a thread of love stretches gently through time. For now, you do not need to do anything at all. Just rest and let the story unfold around you like a soft shawl. In a town folded between low hills and a silver river, there was a narrow street where the stones remembered every footstep. In the evening, lanterns over doorways glowed with a quiet golden light, and the air smelled faintly of paper and distant rain. On that street stood a little bookshop with bay windows and a crooked sign that read, "The Paper Lantern." Inside, shelves rose from floor to ceiling, filled with books that had been read and reread until their pages turned the color of tea. Dust motes drifted in the shafts of light from the windows, turning slowly as if time itself were pausing to rest. The shop belonged to a gentle woman named Mara. She moved with unhurried steps, as though she did not wish to disturb the quiet between the shelves. Each morning she swept the front step, watered the trailing plant over the doorway, and set a fresh candle on the counter to be lit when the light outside began to fade. Behind the counter hung a row of old wooden postboxes, each with a tiny brass door and a keyhole worn bright by many hands. Mara had found them years before at a market by the river. They were scratched and faintly painted in soft shades of green and blue. She had polished them and given them a new home on the shop wall. Over time, the post boxes became part of the town's gentle rituals. People slipped letters into them on their way home from work, on their way to the market, on winter mornings when their breath rose in clouds around them. Some letters were addressed to neighbors. Some were anonymous notes of kindness for anyone who needed a quiet word. Some were letters that would never be sent, written simply for the comfort of putting feelings into ink on still afternoons when only the clock and the river seemed to be moving. Mara would unlock the postboxes and sort the letters with careful hands. She placed them in the little baskets behind the counter, ready for the postman or for a visitor who had been told to ask for a particular envelope. She loved the soft rustle of paper and the faint smell of ink, the sense that every folded page carried a small, steady light. One autumn day, the sky was pale, and a thin, cool wind slipped along the street. The bookshop was warm and dim, lamplight pooling on the floor. Mara decided it was time to dust behind the post boxes. They had hung in the same pattern for many years, and there was a small pleasure in taking them down and seeing the clean rectangles they left on the wall. Most of the boxes were light in her hands, but one, painted a deep, mossy green, was unexpectedly heavy. Mara felt a weight shift inside it as she carried it to the counter. Curious, she opened the little brass door. There was nothing in the main compartment. She ran her finger along the wood and felt a small ridge where the back panel did not quite sit flush. Gently, she tapped the box against her palm. A narrow piece of wood slid free, revealing a hidden space. Inside, wrapped in a ribbon the color of a winter sky, was a bundle of old letters. The world around her seemed to breathe out and fall quiet. The hum of the street softened. The lamplight felt warmer. Mara set the bundle on the counter and untied the ribbon with slow fingers. The top letter was written on thick, creamy paper. The ink had faded to a soft brown, and across the front was a single name in looping script, Rowan. Beneath it lay another letter addressed to Lila. The names alternated as Mara lifted the stack in her hands. A quiet back-and-forth conversation, folded and forgotten. She did not open the letters right away. Instead, she carried the bundle to the small, round window at the back of the shop where the light was gentle and steady. Outside, the river moved past, a silver band between the hills. A few leaves drifted along its surface, turning until they disappeared around the bend. Mara settled into the old wooden chair by the window, the one that curved to fit the shape of her back. She rested the letters in her lap and sat for a moment, listening to footsteps on the street, the faint cry of a gull, the soft ticking of the clock. The shop felt like a held breath, waiting. Then she opened the first letter. The handwriting belonged to Lila. She wrote of a village by the sea where the air always tasted of salt and where cliffs rose in gentle steps from the shore. She wrote of a cartographer named Rowan who had arrived to map the coastline and stayed longer than he had planned because of the way the evening light spilled down the cliffs and because of the people who welcomed him with simple warmth. Lila's words were careful and observant. She mentioned the way Rowan bent over his maps, charcoal darkening his fingers, how he would pause now and then to look out at the horizon as if making sure it was still there, how his quiet laugh seemed to make a room feel safer. The next letter was from Rowan, written from a room above a harbor, windows rattling gently in the sea wind. He wrote of the village Lila had left when she traveled inland. He described how the tides moved along the shore, how the sound of her voice still lingered in the echo of the waves. He asked about the place she had gone to, about a river she had mentioned, about the streets she now walked. Letter by letter, a tender picture grew. Lila had journeyed from the sea to a town that sounded very much like Mara's own. She had gone to care for an aging aunt and had found herself in a place of chimneys and market stalls, of winter fog and a river that ran past with a quieter sound than the ocean. She felt herself half at home and half still listening for the crash of waves. Rowan's letters followed the path of his work. He moved along the coast, sketching bays and headlands, his maps filling with careful lines and tiny notes. Yet every letter circled back to Lila. He described the color of the sky at dawn and asked if the river where she lived reflected the light in the same way. He wrote of small things he knew she would notice, the pattern of ripples when a stone fell into the water, the smell of wet rope on the docks. Their words did not rush. They did not make grand demands. Instead, they moved with a quiet patience, like two paths winding through the same landscape, sometimes drawing closer, sometimes drifting apart, always aware of each other's presence. Mara read until the light outside grew softer, and the letters in her hands took on a golden tint. The story in the pages began to change. Lila wrote of uncertainty, of not knowing how long she would remain in the town by the river. Rowan spoke of possible journeys inland. They did not know if their paths would cross again. Yet even in doubt, there was tenderness. They wrote of gratitude, of the comfort of knowing that someone, somewhere, thought of them with warmth. As Mara turned each page, she noticed something else. There were no stamps, no addresses, no postmarks. These letters had never traveled through the hands of a postman. They had been folded and tied and kept. Perhaps they were copies of letters sent. Perhaps they were words that had lived only on these pages, never leaving the room where they were written. The last letter in the bundle was from Lila. She wrote of a market she had visited, where an old, mossy green postbox had caught her eye. She imagined filling it with letters that could not be mailed, giving them a safe place to rest. Perhaps, she mused, someone one day would open that little door and discover the loves and hopes sleeping inside. Mara looked from the letter in her hand to the green post box on the counter. The connection slid into place as softly as a key turning in a lock. The box she had rescued from a riverside market years ago had once been part of Lila's imaginings. The letters had traveled with it somehow and had been hidden behind its panel, waiting for the right moment to be found. She tied the ribbon back around the bundle, feeling the gentle crinkle of old paper, and held it against her chest for a breath. Then she placed the letters inside the postbox again and set it gently on the counter. Outside, the river kept moving. Inside, the shop felt full of quiet, as if another presence had joined the books and dust and light. That night, after she locked the door and turned the sign to closed, Mara carried the green postbox upstairs to her small flat. She made herself a cup of tea and sat at the little kitchen table, the letters spread before her in the lamplight. The steam from the cup curled in the air, softening the edges of everything. Mara knew what it was to carry unspoken words. There were things she had never said, feelings she had folded carefully and tucked away. She had loved once and had parted in peace, both of them choosing different paths. Yet sometimes late at night she wondered what might have been written if they had tried to say more. Reading Lila and Rowan's letters, she felt as though someone had taken her own quiet ache and translated it into ink and paper. The letters did not promise a perfect ending. They simply showed two people willing to share their inner weather with each other, even when the future was unclear. In the days that followed, Mara returned again and again to the bundle. She read only a little at a time, a page or two between customers, a paragraph before bed. She began to copy fragments into a small notebook. A description of morning light, a line about how seeing your name in another's handwriting can make you feel suddenly less alone. The letters stirred a gentle idea. One evening, when the sky had turned a soft gray and the first lamps outside were winking on, she took down a blank wooden board and painted careful letters on it. When the paint dried, she hung the board on the wall above the post boxes. It read, "Letters lost, love found." Beneath the sign, Mara placed a small table with paper and pens. A handwritten note invited anyone who wished to write two kinds of letters. One letter could be one they did not intend to send, sealed and slipped into the mossy green post box. The other could be a message of kindness left unsealed, to be placed on a corkboard beneath the sign, where anyone who needed a gentle sentence might take it with them. At first, only a few letters appeared. A simple thank you to a neighbor, a note to a friend far away, a small card that read, "You are enough exactly as you are." Mara pinned them carefully, edges straight, and stepped back to look. The corner of the shop felt different already, as if the wall itself were learning a new language. Day by day, the collection grew. People hesitated at the table, then chose a piece of paper and began to write. Some wrote quickly, as though the words had been waiting just beneath the surface. Others paused often, head tilted, pen hovering in the air. Sealed envelopes slipped into the postbox with soft, secretive sounds. Unsealed notes bloomed across the corkboard, turning it into a garden of small voices. Mara never opened the sealed letters. They belonged to the private chambers of people's hearts, but she could feel the weight of the postbox changing as more envelopes gathered inside. It felt, in her hands, like a kind of trust. One crisp afternoon, a man stepped into the shop carrying a wooden box. Snow clung to his scarf, melting darkly at the edges. He introduced himself as Theo and said he was sorting through his grandmother's house on the hill. He placed the wooden box on the counter and opened the lid. Inside were carefully tied bundles of paper, a few old photographs, and a slim journal. The photograph on top showed a young woman standing by a river that looked very much like the one outside, the paper lantern. She held a book to her chest, and there was something bright and thoughtful in her eyes. My grandmother's name was Lila, Theo said. We found these while clearing her rooms. She wrote about a bookshop by the river and about a postbox she once loved. I wondered if you might know anything about them. Quietly, Mara told him about the mossy green postbox and the letters she had found hidden inside. She spoke of Lila and Rowan's words without reading them aloud, just describing the feeling of them, gentle, attentive, full of patience. She mentioned the letters lost, love found wall, and the way the town had begun to tuck small pieces of their hearts into envelopes and notes. They opened Lila's box together. Inside were more letters exchanged with Rowan, some with postmarks from years long gone, some carefully copied, perhaps for safekeeping. There were also pages from Lila's journal, where she had written about how love can take many forms, and how sometimes its kindest expression is simply wishing someone well from afar. Theo read a line about words traveling quietly through time. His voice grew softer as he reached the end of the sentence, and he smiled, an open, slightly wistful smile that seemed to light his face from within. They brewed tea and carried the box to the small table by the round window. Outside, the river flowed by, its surface pale with winter light. They sat with the letters spread between them, careful not to disturb their order. Theo told Mara that Lila had stayed in the town on the hill, making a life woven of simple, steadfast joys. She had never quite stopped writing letters, even when there was no one in particular to send them to. She left them in drawers, in books, under paperweights. As a child, Theo had loved to find them like small treasures, each one addressed to someone real or imagined. Lila had encouraged him to write as well, to speak kindly to his future self, to put into words the hopes he did not yet know how to hold. Listening, Mara felt the story of the letters widen. They were not just a record of a single, uncertain love. They were part of the way Lila chose to live, with attention, with care, with a belief that words could soften life's sharper edges. Theo began to visit the shop again. Sometimes he brought another of his grandmother's letters or a story she had told. Sometimes he simply arrived with cold fingers and a hopeful look, and Mara would say, as naturally as if they had been doing it for years, "The kettle is on. There is paper by the window if you feel like writing." They did not hurry whatever was growing between them. Their conversations moved at the same gentle pace as the river outside. They spoke about small things, favorite books, the way the town smelled after rain, the comfort of a particular mug. Sometimes they sat in companionable silence, each writing in a notebook. The scratch of their pens, a soft, steady music. The letters lost, love found wall, grew fuller. Sometimes Mara would arrive in the morning to find that someone had come after closing, slipping a note through the door, to be pinned up later. The board held apologies, thank yous, wishes, simple lines of encouragement. People began to take notes with them, keeping them in pockets and wallets, on bedside tables and behind mirrors. Through it all, the old letters of Lila and Rowan rested in their box behind the counter. no longer hidden but not on display. They were like a gentle foundation stone, unseen yet supporting everything that grew above them. Now and then, on a quiet evening, Mara would take out one page and read a single paragraph, then put it back with a small grateful touch. Winter deepened. Snow came and went, softening the edges of the town, quieting the world outside the bookshop windows. Inside, the lamps cast warm circles of light on the carpets and shelves. On some evenings, Theo stayed to help Mara straighten books and tidy the wall of letters. They moved slowly, each of them aware, in an easy, unspoken way, that they did not need to rush whatever story they had entered together. One night, as flakes began to drift past the windows again, Mara stood alone in the shop after closing. The silence felt gentle rather than empty. She walked to the mossy green postbox and rested her hand on its smooth wooden top. She thought of all the letters now sleeping inside, their sealed edges pressed lightly against one another. She thought of Lila's first imagining of a place where unsent words could rest. She thought of Rowan tracing maps, and of the way his letters had curved from sea to river, connecting two quiet hearts. She thought of how those old words had rippled outward, touching the lives of people who would never know their names. Upstairs in her flat, the room was dim and peaceful. Mara made herself a small cup of tea and carried it to her bedside table. On it lay a single sheet of paper. Earlier that day, she had written a letter not to anyone far away, but to her own heart. She had written of gratitude for the shop, for the river, for the unexpected threads of connection that had woven themselves into her life. The letter did not ask for anything. It simply noticed what already was. Outside, the town settled into night. Windows glowed and then darkened. The river slipped past with its soft, steady murmur. Somewhere, a dog barked once, then curled up to sleep. Snow touched down on rooftops and railings and cobblestones, making every edge softer. As Mara lay down and drew the blankets around her, she felt the day lift away like a leaf on water. The stories in the shop, the letters on the wall, the quiet presence of Lila and Rowan's words, the gentle companionship of Theo's visits, all of it faded to a warm hum at the edge of her awareness. She was simply a person in a small room, breathing in and out, held by the familiar shape of her bed. Countless other people were lying down, closing their eyes, letting their own days drift away. Somewhere, someone was writing a letter. Somewhere, a letter was being opened. Somewhere, words were finding their way from one heart to another, as they have always done. And now here you are, resting in your own quiet place. Feel once more the support beneath you, steady and kind. Notice the way your body has become heavier, as if sleep is gently gathering you in its arms. Your hands can relax, your shoulders sinking a little deeper. The muscles of your face can soften, your brow smooth, your jaw unclenched. Your breath moves in and out without any effort. You might imagine it moving like the river through the town, calm and continuous, or like ink flowing along a page in slow curling lines. Each inhale brings in softness. Each exhale releases a little more of the day. If thoughts appear, you do not need to push them away. You might picture them as letters set gently into an inner postbox to be opened another time. For now, you can let them rest. There is nowhere you must be, nothing you must decide, nothing you must fix or finish. The town in the story has grown quiet. The lamps in the paper lantern have been turned low. The mossy green postbox stands in the dimness full of sleeping letters. The river glides on under the night sky. Snow settles on the cobblestones like soft white paper. Everything is at rest, and you can rest as well. Let your awareness grow softer, like ink fading on old paper. Let your thoughts drift farther away like footsteps disappearing down a snowy street. You are safe here in this moment, in this stillness. You can let go now. The story will keep walking on its own, somewhere beyond the edge of your dreams. You do not need to follow it. You can simply sink deeper into the warmth that holds you. You are held. You are safe. You are allowed to sleep. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.